All right, let's dive into some Week 11 fantasy football. We've got some expert analysis, rankings, and predictions to break down for you.
Should be fun.
We're going to unearth some hidden gems, like some RB and QB sleepers who could win you your week, and highlight some must-watch matchups, too.
Gotta look beyond the obvious, right?
Exactly. All right, let's start with running backs. Nick Chubb immediately jumps out.
Oh, yeah.
He's facing the Saints, and while I know Chubb is always a solid pick,
Right.
this matchup, it's just, well, the stats are impossible to ignore.
Yeah, he's not always, super consistent in fantasy.
Right.
But the Saints' defense, they've been really struggling against power backs. Think missed tackles, wide open running lanes.
Recipe for a Chubb breakout game.
Exactly. Plus, they've given up the second most touchdowns to running backs this season, the most 100-plus yard rushing games.
Yeah.
And they're 31st in rush EPA, so they're really bad at stopping the run.
So even with a stacked RB lineup, Chubb is a must-start this week.
Absolutely. Don't bench him in this matchup, that's for sure.
Okay, next we head to Detroit. We've got a little bit of a conundrum here. Two potentially powerful backs in the same backfield.
Interesting.
David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
They're both ranked pretty highly this week, and they're going up against the Jaguars. And, well, let's just say that defense has been pretty generous to running backs this year.
Generous is a good word for it. I mean,
Active.
they're giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs.
Right.
So there's definitely opportunity there for both Montgomery and Gibbs. But how does that split workload affect their fantasy value,
Yeah.
especially those crucial flex spots?
Right. It's tough to say for sure if they'll both go off or if they'll kind of cannibalize each other's production.
Yeah.
Maybe a flex play for each of them is the safest bet.
I think that's a reasonable approach. I mean, keep an eye on the injury report, too, and see if there's any news about how their roles might shift. You never know.
Right. Good point. Okay, speaking of potential breakout games, Raheem Mostert of the Dolphins has caught my eye. He's got a matchup against the Raiders.
Okay, yeah. And their defense, it's been known to give up a lot of rushing yards and touchdowns.
For sure. You know, Mostert's recent performance is really key here.
Okay.
He seems to have solidified his role as the lead back in Miami,
Good.
which makes him even more appealing in this matchup.
Yeah.
Plus, don't forget about a potential positive game script. If the Dolphins are ahead, they're going to lean on Mostert to run down the clock.
Right. So we're looking at potential RB2 or solid flex play with Mostert.
Yeah, I like it.
These guys, they're flying under the radar a little bit, but I'm seeing some real potential.
Definitely some intriguing options to consider.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about those quarterback sleepers. I'm excited to dig into these quarterback sleepers. Russell Wilson with the Steelers, he's a name that's been kind of bubbling up.
Yeah.
He's putting up decent numbers, averaging 18.9 fantasy points over his last 3 games. Not bad.
And his Week 11 matchup against the Ravens, that's what makes him a real sleeper pick.
Okay. You might think, Ravens defense scary. But if you look a little closer, there's secondary. It's got some weaknesses, some things you can exploit.
Okay, let's break those weaknesses down. What are we talking about?
Well, they've already given up 22 touchdowns through the air this season.
Wow.
And opposing quarterbacks, they're averaging like almost 300 passing yards per game against them.
So almost 300, per game?
Yeah, like 294.9 to be exact.
Oh, okay.
They really struggle with mobile quarterbacks, too.
Interesting.
I mean, Wilson, he's not Lamar Jackson or anything, but he's not a statue back there in the pocket.
Right.
You can extend plays, make things happen outside the pocket.
Yeah.
That could really hurt the Ravens.
Okay, so don't let that Ravens defense scare you off. This is a classic case of the matchup maybe trumping that big name recognition.
Exactly. This could be Wilson's chance to sort of remind everybody why he was once considered like a fantasy superstar.
Yeah, for sure. Now, another quarterback who's been heating up is Justin Herbert, Chargers. He's got at least 19 fantasy points in his last 3 games. Plus, he's even adding some rushing yards.
Yeah, which is always a nice little bonus.
Always a bonus
for fantasy quarterbacks. I mean, he's averaging 4.8 rushing points per game.
That's not nothing.
That's significant.
Yeah.
And then when you look at this matchup against the Bengals, it gets really interesting.
Okay, what's the story with their defense? Why does it make Herbert so appealing?
Well, the Bengals have been surprisingly vulnerable to opposing quarterbacks this season. I mean, they've allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks.
Oh.
Yeah, they haven't been able to generate consistent pressure. And their secondary has had lapses in coverage.
Right.
That's, opportunity for a guy like Herbert.
Yeah.
Makes plays both inside and outside the pocket.
So we're saying Herbert's on this hot streak, and with this favorable matchup, high upside play for Week 11. I like it.
He's definitely somebody to consider if you need a quarterback who can put up big numbers.
Okay, so we've got our sleeper picks. Wilson, Herbert, both with compelling matchups, recent performance to back it up. But we got to talk about those must-watch games.
Right.
The games that maybe don't involve our sleepers but are going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like Chiefs versus Bills, Mahomes against Allen. It's like, I don't know, heavyweight boxing match except with footballs.
Yeah, and this year there's like an added layer of intrigue with Josh Allen.
Okay.
He's been absolutely unstoppable against the blitz.
Unstoppable, really.
Yeah, like 705 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions.
Splits. Yeah.
Wow. The Chiefs, maybe they need to rethink their game plan.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch. Do they stick with what they know, or do they try to adjust?
Right.
Either way, you know that Chiefs-Bills game, always a fantasy goldmine.
Yeah. And we've got another quarterback duel on the schedule that's got me excited already. Herbert versus Burrow.
Oh, yeah.
Chargers, Bengals, two of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the league. Both incredible arm talent, extend plays. Yeah, this matchup goes beyond just the quarterbacks, though.
Okay.
Keep an eye on that battle in the trenches. Bengals edge rusher, Trey Hendrickson against Chargers left tackle, Rashawn Slater.
Oh, yeah.
That's a matchup between two elite players.
Yeah.
Could have a huge impact on the game.
Okay, so we've got Wilson and Herbert, our QB sleeper picks. But then we got those marquee matchups. Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Burrow. Gotta watch.
Absolutely. Can't miss those. And, we're always looking to uncover more sleepers, those hidden gems.
The guys that can win you your week.
Exactly.
Which brings us to some other intriguing players across different positions who might be flying under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've covered some running backs, quarterbacks, but there's more. Got to talk about some other potential sleepers, across different positions, the hidden gems.
Absolutely. Finding those undervalued players, the ones who could really outperform expectations.
Yeah. So any wide receivers catching your eye, who might be flying under the radar this week?
One guy, George Pickens, Steelers.
Okay, Pickens.
He's got that, big play potential. Can just, turn a game on its head.
Yeah.
And he's going up against that Ravens secondary.
The one we talked about.
Yeah. Giving up all those passing yards and touchdowns.
Right. And if Wilson's having a good day, Pickens could really benefit.
Exactly. It's like, it's a perfect storm, really.
Yeah. Okay, Pickens. Anyone else?
Another wide receiver. Tank Dell, Texans.
Okay.
Blazing speed, knack for getting open.
He's playing the Cowboys, right?
Yeah. And their secondary, not exactly a shutdown unit.
Not at all.
No. So he could be a, sneaky good play, especially in those deeper leagues.
Deeper leagues, right. Okay, so we got Pickens, we got Dell. What about tight ends? Any hidden gems there?
Will Dissly, Chargers.
Okay.
He's been quietly putting up some solid numbers, getting more targets.
Good.
And a favorable matchup this week. Bengals.
Right.
They haven't been great defending tight ends.
So Dissly could be a difference maker, especially with all those tight ends on bye this week.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's amazing all these players we've uncovered just by, looking a little deeper.
It's all about doing your homework, right? Looking beyond the obvious names.
Right. All right, so let's do a quick recap. Our top sleepers for Week 11. Running backs. Nick Chubb.
Must start
Against the Saints.
Absolutely.
David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Lions duo.
Flex options against the Jaguars.
Yeah, keep an eye on them.
And then Raheem Mostert could have a solid week against those Raiders.
Yep.
Quarterbacks, we've got Russell Wilson. Great matchup against that struggling Ravens secondary.
Oh, sure.
And then Justin Herbert, who's been on fire lately, facing a beatable Bengals defense.
Yeah, definitely some upside there.
And don't forget those bonus sleepers, George Pickens.
Big play potential.
Tank Dell.
Speedy Texans receiver.
And Will Dissly, that Chargers tight end, quietly putting up numbers.
And a good matchup this week.
All right, so there you have it. Week 11 sleepers. Hopefully this gives you a little edge in your fantasy leagues.
Absolutely. There you go.
And remember, do your research, trust your gut, take some risks. Most importantly, have fun. That's what it's all about.
Enjoy the game.
Enjoy the games. Good luck this week, everyone.